Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Brilliant Classics reissue of the legacy, almost complete recordings, of the great Italian pianist Sergio Fiorentino, who lived from 1927 to 1998. There we go. He is the only other pianist, Arturo Benedetti Michelangeli said about Sergio Fiorentino. Presumably the only other pianist besides me. Michelangeli, who was never known for his modesty. But look, this guy was great. He was one of the great ones. And like so many, how do I say this? Classical music people are kind of like, hunters for the Holy Grail. It's considered correct to vilify the major labels, to dump on the artists that they promote, to claim that the greatest performers never got recorded, or never treated fairly, or never got the attention that they deserved, and to go hunting around through the highways and byways of the record universe for that unbelievable great performance by the person that nobody paid attention to. And every so often you find one of those things, which only adds fuel to the fire of these sort of, conspiracy theorists who think that, the purpose of the classical music world is to prevent them from hearing great performances. And Fiorentino is one of those cult pianists, but he was a great artist and a great pianist. Was he greater? Was he the only one besides Michelangeli? Of course not. Of course not. He was up there with some of the best, and he did not get the kind of attention that his talent probably warranted. But he got enough. We got this 26 CDs worth. It's not so bad. It really isn't. And he had a lot of attention given to him posthumously. It should have happened while he was still around. Because his recorded, his efforts in the studio were patchy and fewer and farther between, perhaps, than his gifts warranted. But that's, it happens. It just happens. It doesn't justify the paranoia. It really doesn't. But I just want to say that because, when you may, if you're, interested in this kind of repertoire, and if you're a piano person, hear a lot about him, and his voice spoken in hushed tones and all of that stuff. But no, he was a fantastic and interesting and individual pianist, a genuine recreative artist who was a partner of the composer, not just somebody who's was dashing stuff off. A really deeply reflective and wonderful artist. So let's make no mistake. And it's a pity that he didn't get more attention in his lifetime. But anyway, this 26 CD box, let's be clear, contains all of the Fiorentino recordings that were originally reissued in several boxes on Piano Classics, specifically the Berlin recordings, the Liszt recordings, and the Rachmaninoff recordings, and then the early stuff. And the Rachmaninoff recordings, I will say right off, in the box here, Brilliant Classics, do not include 5 transcriptions that he did and the 2 piano sonatas, because he did all the preludes. Apparently at one session, he just dashed them off, and he didn't dash them off in terms of interpretation, but he did them all quite well. And he did beautiful Rachmaninoff piano sonatas, but he re-recorded them. So they left off the piano sonatas that were included here, and the transcriptions are not available in here, which is a pity, because they should have just thrown everything in. It's just so much easier not to overthink these things. You know what I mean? But I was, bitten by the Fiorentino bug when, his name was being bandied about a few years ago. And so I got these things. And now I have this thing. And, it's all nice to have. I'm glad I have it. But just pointing out what's going on. So first you get a booklet. And the booklet contains the same notes that were in those Piano Classics box, by and large. And we also have, so let's see, what have we got here? Okay, the Berlin recordings, the first 10 CDs of the Berlin recordings, which are the best sounding by far. They're digital recordings. The Liszt recordings, which is discs 11 through 15, are carefully remastered from LPs because the tape masters have vanished, which is ridiculous. I mean, where do people put these things? Under their mattress? Who knows? Then you've got the Rachmaninoff preludes, and then CDs 17 through 26, the early recordings, which contain a lot of stuff duplicated later. And we're going to go through it now. So you know about the Rachmaninoff preludes. We don't have to talk about those. I'm going to actually use these boxes because it's easier than going through disc by disc, the early stuff and the other stuff. Well, most of the Chopin is in the early recordings, but let's talk about the Berlin recordings, which are absolutely superb. He was an amazing, first of all, Liszt pianist. I mean, there's plenty of Liszt in here, thank goodness, because he was just incredible. So you've got the Fantasy Opus 17, the Sonata Number 2, the Arabesca, the Novelette, and the Romanza, and they are marvelous. The Fantasy is incredible. Fabulous, wonderful, amazing performance. Beautiful, beautiful Schubert performances. He understood, he's a guy, with Liszt and Chopin, he could be very free and, have his way with the text and the grand romantic tradition, But with Schubert, straightforward, limpid, natural, effortless. He understood the style. It's the mark of a great artist. It really is. So you've got the sonatas in A major, A minor, and the impromptus. Chopin, Sonata Number 3, Schubert, D960, a beautiful D960, the last Schubert sonata. Liszt, the sonata, the ballades, Funeral, La Leggerezza, and Waldesrauschen, ooh, baby. César Franck, wonderful César Franck, the usual Francky things, the prelude, chorale, and fugue, and stuff like that. Really beautiful Franck recording. Scriabin, Sonata Fantasy Number 2, Rachmaninoff Sonata Number 2, Prokofiev Number 8, which he does amazingly well. And he's not like Richter in Number 8. It's softer edged Prokofiev, but no less exciting and beautiful technically and thoughtful and wonderful. Scriabin Sonatas 1 and 4, which he does marvelously. Rachmaninoff Sonata Number 1, and then 2 discs of Bach, suites and transcriptions, and the partitas numbers 1 and 4. You got the French suites. His Bach is, old school romantic Bach, and none the worse for it. It's beautiful. And then we've got Debussy, Scarlatti, Moskowski, Fauré, Schumann, and Liszt on CD 10. And he didn't do much Debussy, unfortunately. It would have been good to hear more of that. And his Scarlatti is nothing special, but it's only a couple sonatas, so that's all right. So those are the Berlin recordings, most of which are just fabulous. Then you've got the Liszt stuff, and the Liszt stuff is just great. I mean, it's just great. 6 discs. It's, like I said, remastered from LPs, but the recordings were made between 1958 and 1997 from original tapes and transfers from original LPs. So there you go. Some of it is from tapes, but I can't recommend his Liszt highly enough. When I was doing the repertoire disc on the Mephisto Waltz, his was just incredible. It's as if he wrote it. I mean, he paid sometimes no attention to Liszt's indicated dynamics and all that, but that's okay because it's Liszt. You get to do that stuff. And you've got the Années de Perlinage, Suisse and Venice, Napoli, some Paganini Study Number 2, Gnomon Regan, Hungarian Rhapsodies, which are amazing, the Grand Galop Chromatique, oh, that's so much fun, Ab Irato, and the Grand Fantasy de Bravura on the Clochette de Paganini. Oh, gosh, that's fun. Oh, it's so much fun. I can't even tell you. Then you've got a wonderful disc of late pieces, which he plays with total conviction and puts over magnificently. But here's the Mephisto Waltz, 5 Hungarian folk songs, Sposalizio, piano concertos 1 and 2, so-so accompaniments, so-so sonics, but, the Weber Polonaise Brillante, Liebestraum Number 3, La Campanella, Vision, Hungarian Rhapsodies 8, 12, and 15, Ballads 1 and 2, wonderful performance of those. They're not as well known as they deserve to be. Funérailles, another Mephisto Waltz Number 1. Yes, how many of those do we need? Lots and lots of them. More Ballads 1 and 2, Funérailles, La Leggerezza, Waldesrauschen, and another Liszt sonata. So, his list is epic. Absolutely epic. Now we have to turn to this because I can't find the other box of the early stuff. The early recordings are CDs 17 through 26. That's where you get a lot of his Chopin. And the sonics are variable, quite variable, actually. But let's see, what have we got? CD 17. We can do this quickly. Yes, Chopin, Sonata number 2. Mozart, Piano Concerto 21, which is nothing special. Beethoven's Appassionata and C minor variations, which are, well, it's the sonics that kind of get you. You know, they're somewhat swimmy. Some of the sonics are just not great. Some more Bach. His Bach is always fun. The Italian Concerto and the Chromatic Fantasy and Fugue and a couple, Busoni arrangements of the organ Prelude and Fugue in D minor and the Chaconne in D minor. Those are wonderful. Beethoven's Pathetique. Well, that's okay. And the Moonlight and the Waldstein and Schumann's Faschingsschwank aus Wien and Kindersehnen. Some of them, just a couple of them. And Carnival, you get Carnival a couple times in here, I believe. Arabesca, the Arabesca is wonderful. The Symphonic Etudes are absolutely nifty. The Brahms Paganini variations are really, really good. Really good. And you also get, let's see, the Handel variations, yes. Also fantastic. Some Mendelssohn, a couple Mendelssohn Biddies, Borodin Scherzo, Rachmaninoff Etudes Tableau, and absolutely dismal sound. Let's see, some Kreisler things, some Bach stuff. Chopin, the Ballades and the Scherzi. Some of his best Chopin playing, the Ballades and Scherzi. Just very, very individual and characterful and beautifully shaped. Chopin Etudes, Opus 10. And then Opus 25 and the Trois Nouvelles, all the etudes. There you go. You've got all of them. There's some great stuff there, too. There really is. But we will all have our favorite Chopin etudes, I think, don't we? And let's see, more Chopin. Let's see, the waltzes. Very highly inflected waltzes. Lots of rubato and puffing and huffing and whatnot. And the impromptus, those are here, which are lovely. And almost done here. Two more. Let's see, more Chopin. Yes, the Andante Spierato and Grand Polonaise Brilliant. And a bunch of polonaises, which also, like everything he does, you know, you may like him, you may not like him, but he does things, and the things he does are all legitimate. They're not tasteless, but they're interesting. They're refreshing, I think, often. And then more Chopin polonaises and the Grand Fantasy on Polish airs. And with that, with the Guildford Philharmonic under Vernon Handley in the Grand Fantasy on Polish airs or something. Wow, okay. That's it. That's Fiorentino. He was a thing. You know, he was a real thing. He was a wonderful, wonderful artist that you should know. So I'm not sure if these piano classics things are still around. If you want to just get the Berlin recordings or just the Liszt recordings, I would get those two at a minimum. But you know, at the Brilliant Classics price, you can probably just spring for the whole box and save money. I mean, you'll have to do a little, you know, shuffling around and comparing. But it's definitely a necessity for you Liszt people, piano people, Bach transcription people, Schumann people. He was a marvel. He really was. And it's been one of my great pleasures of the past decade or so, getting to know his work in detail, because, you know, he just had ideas, and they were all worth listening to. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.